Morning, hello. 5 days remain in the summer transfer window. There is so much that can still happen. On Good Morning Transfers today, we'll bring you up to date with everything you need to know. Never say never. Could Liverpool star player Mo Salah leave the club and head to Saudi Arabia? Jamie Carragher doesn't think so, but do you at home? Harry Maguire's future still up in the air. Will West Ham go back in again for the Manchester United defender, or will he be staying put this week? Plus, Romelu Lukaku may finally get his move away from Chelsea, but will Roma be able to afford the striker? And he's been extremely impressive over the last couple of years. He's attracting a lot of interest. Will we see a late move for Nottingham Forest winger Brennan Johnson before the deadline this Friday night? Get involved at home using the hashtag #TransferTalk. And we're also streaming live on the Sky Sports Premier League YouTube channel. Joining us today, we've got Sam Abasaki, Naveed Haroon and Kwaku Afari. And we are going to start with West Ham today because they've been very busy in this summer transfer window. They're considering whether to go back in for Manchester United defender Harry Maguire. They had a £30 million deal agreed with United earlier this month, only for Maguire to decide to stay at Old Trafford and fight for his place. It's thought West Ham are exploring a loan deal. Maguire has now entered the final 2 years of his contract, and United do have an option to extend for a further year. So we were talking earlier in the window about a permanent move away for Harry Maguire. So why does a loan move make sense for Maguire now?
He's no longer Manchester United captain, hasn't played a minute of football this season. Obviously, he's been a decent servant to Manchester United, but it looks like he's no longer needed at Old Trafford. I think Ten Hag's made that pretty clear, the decision to take the captaincy off him and to not play him at all this season. And so a fresh start for Harry Maguire is what's needed. He's a man that has ambitions to play for England during the Euros next year. And if he wants to do that and wants to maintain his place as the starter for Gareth Southgate, then he has to make a move. And West Ham, we've seen it this season already. As Chelsea fans now, we experience West Ham in terms of what they can do. They're a team on the up and up, especially with the signings they've made this summer. And if they can get Harry Maguire in on loan, the player that's got international experience, the player that's well-versed in Premier League football, then it'll make a lot of sense. He won't walk straight into the starting 11, though. They've got so many players in that position, so he'll have to work for his position in that team. But I definitely think he'll enhance not only West Ham on the pitch, but also off of it as well. There's not a leadership void, but they've lost Declan Rice this summer. They lost Mark Noble last year. So he can be that voice in the dressing room and definitely can establish himself as a West Ham player.
That's why I think a loan move doesn't necessarily make sense, because I think if he is to go to a team like West Ham where there is a lot of competition, will that not decrease his value in terms of the fact that he won't be a guaranteed starter? His value will go down anyway because he'll only have one more year or so at Manchester United, and then the 30 mil that West Ham previously bid for him will be a lot less in another window. So I'm quite confused that he's not linked with a permanent move away, especially when it's been so clear that Ten Hag favours other defenders over him. But I think a move is definitely something that he needs.
West Ham have just signed Mavropanos in this window. I mean, Quaker alluded to it there, that they've strengthened already at the back in this transfer window. So why would they want another defender in there?
The only reason I can think of is just to upgrade the defensive area, because they do have 5 centre-backs in there, but Harry Maguire, despite what a lot of people have been saying about him in recent times, he is actually a top centre-back. It just hasn't worked at Manchester United, and he probably suits David Moyes' West Ham better than any other team in the Premier League. So then you're looking at Maguire and Zuma as a pairing at centre-back. That's not terrible. And then Ogbonna started this weekend. He's getting on a little bit. I do worry about Mavropanos, though. He's just been bought in for quite a bit of money, and all of a sudden Maguire's now potentially the main option. But it sort of makes sense. I think Maguire, we've mentioned so many times throughout this transfer window, needs a move to somewhere, and West Ham feels like it makes sense. It
doesn't look like West Ham are stopping either with their transfer incomings this week. Their technical director, Tim Stuyton, is understood to have flown to Brazil for face-to-face talks with Corinthian officials over the signing of forward Yuri Alberto. The Brazilian international has 4 years left on his contract. Tell us a little bit about this player, Nabeed.
I was slated last week because I think I mentioned about a player who plays in Argentina, and people said you don't watch that league. I'll admit I don't watch the Brazilian league either. However, we have to do research, and essentially what I've sort of gathered so far is been described as a Brazilian wonder kid, which of course a lot of people say there's a lot of wonder kids that come out of Brazil. But he's a good dribbler, direct, gets to the byline. He's been sort of compared to Martinelli, maybe not as quick, but he's got the acceleration. But one of the things that I did find from the stuff I was watching was he's very raw, but he's a very good finisher. I think one thing Martinelli probably needs to work on is his finishing, but he's got that in the locker naturally. He's just had a very strange career. He spent a bit of time in Russia before going to Corinthians, so it's quite a wild signing. But so far, West Ham's window now, you'd say, has been very, very good, where 7 days ago we were saying this is not a good window for them.
Well, let's talk about that in a bit more detail, because West Ham announced last night the signing of Mohamed Kudus from Ajax. So the mood has really changed around West Ham over the last 2 weeks, really since the start of the season when they've got players through the door.
Yeah, definitely. They have 2 wins, 1 draw. They're living life at the moment. And the thing is, with West Ham, a lot of people are sceptical about whether they were going to start the season like they did last year, losing Declan Rice and losing that leader in their team. And a few weeks ago, like Nunes said, we were questioning whether they're going to make the changes or the right changes in this window, especially with the whole world knowing they got so much money for their captain. You'd think that. Well, we saw it earlier, you know, some teams were saying we want more for these players. James Ward-Prowse was one of them as well. And then they got him for a good price. He's already made an immediate impact. And then Alvarez, it looks like it's going to take him a bit slower to get acclimatised to the team, but he looks like he's going to be a good player. And then Kudus is just like, I think that's going to, again, be one of the best signings that we see in this window. He's such a good and direct player. And for the type of football West Ham play, where they don't have that much possession of the ball, but when they do, they're going to need players like Bowen, Antonio, and now Kudus, who can do something out of nothing. And if you're a West Ham fan, you'll be loving life. If
I offered you at the start of the window, you lose Rice, but you get Kudus, Ward-Prowse, and Edson Alvarez, would you have taken that?
100%. I'm sure they didn't even expect it, because these are players that you'd think, especially with Kudus, you've seen him linked with Chelsea, United, Arsenal as well, and you're thinking, at least if we put a bid in, we might have some competition for the player, because he's been such a good player for Ajax, for Ghana as well, and it didn't seem like anyone was really interested. Brighton obviously had the interest earlier, and then they weren't able to get to a deal, but the fact that they've signed him and he looks excited, we've seen the video as well with Governor. I think it's going to be a great signing for them.
He's been on the radar of some of the top clubs for a few years, and he had Kudus had an injury, quite a bad injury, and it took him a little bit of time to come back and get back to that level. But I think you're right. I think he's a fantastic player, and he really raises the ceiling of that West Ham United starting 11, the potential that they can have. So I think the question is about whether they can now get the best out of him.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, that West Ham midfield, that is looking tasty.
So tasty. If you look at it, and Edson Alvarez, obviously you expect him to settle in pretty quickly. James Ward-Prowse has already started contributing. He scored a goal on the weekend. He got a couple of assists against Chelsea. And so it's looking good for West Ham. Obviously, Lucas Paqueta's a top quality player. There's a reason why big teams are sniffing around him. And so West Ham are looking promising this season. Of course, they've got European football to contend with, and the Europa League is more demanding than the Conference League that they were in last year. So the reinforcements were needed, but West Ham fans were crying out for signings, and now it looks like they're going to have one of the best windows in the Premier League.
Yeah, good shout. If you want to get in touch at home, you can do #TransferTalk. We were talking about Harry Maguire a little bit earlier on. Manchester United going to be back in the market this week, we think. They're on the search for a left-back. 2 options they are exploring. Chelsea's Marc Cucurella and Tottenham's Sergio Reguilon. United are exploring loan deals on both of those players and looking into their situations. Craig, could you tell us about what's happening with United's current left-backs at the moment?
So Luke Shaw's injured for the foreseeable, which is unfortunate. This is probably the longest period that Luke Shaw's been fit, and it's coincided with the best period of his career in terms of form. So he's going to be out for a little while. Before the season, I did see fullback as a position of weakness for Man United anyway. I do like Wan-Bissaka and I do like Luke Shaw, but I feel like those positions could be improved, and I'm not a big fan of their backups. Malacia would be the natural replacement for Luke Shaw. He's also injured, missed the whole of pre-season. His return is unknown currently. They've got a young fullback, a young left-back. I was talking to Flex about him, Alvaro Fernandez, who was on loan at Preston North End last season. Really tasty player. He's talented. He reminds me of Marcus Alonso in terms of the way he gets forwards. He's athletic. He's good on the ball. He is very young. He hasn't played Premier League football, but he's in and around the United squad. And Ten Hag talked about him in pre-season and said that he's a player that should be looking to break into the first team. I don't know whether United will persist with somebody like that. Obviously, he's unproven at Premier League level, but I did really like the look of him. You expect United to go back in the market, really. For United, it's a difficult situation, though, because they're their weakness is quite clear for everybody to see. It's midfield, and despite the fact that they won on the weekend, they still do need to bring in reinforcements in that position. So for me personally, I'd like to see Erik ten Hag coach his way out of this situation in terms of bringing in a makeshift fullback, whether that's Alvaro Fernandez or whether that's playing Dalot there for the time being, and use those resources elsewhere. But it does look, it's Manchester United. They're going to go back in the market. I just don't think that's the right thing to do with the limited resources they've got at hand.
That's an interesting point you make around utilising the options that they've already got in the squad. And you touched on the issues elsewhere for Manchester United. So do they have bigger problems elsewhere, do you think?
It's a weird one because when you looked at the business that they've done, bringing in Onana, Højlund and Mount, you'd think that they had a good window, and I thought that they did because they strengthened areas that they needed to strengthen. And then you saw from their first few games areas like Kweku said, where in their midfield it looks like they need some reinforcement, some stability there. But also we saw Varane getting injured on the weekend, and Lindelof, who's always going to be a reliable replacement, but has never really been trusted enough to be a consistent centre-back at Manchester United. And if you're talking about a team that is gone from third and winning a trophy and wants to step up that level, they're going to need players to that almost increase the quality that they have in the side. You know, we saw them linked with Kim Min-jae, who went to Bayern Munich. Pavard, looks like that deal hasn't turned into anything. And then also Todibo. And I think that those are the signings that you'd look at Manchester United and say, yeah, those are signings that can increase our level. Also, right wing, is that an area that they want to bring in more quality? They've got a few players out there, Anthony, Pellistri as well, but are they really the standard you expect for a Manchester United winger? A lot of United fans will say that Anthony was better on the weekend. So it's a tough one because they've got areas, but it looks like they're only able to improve those areas if they do make sales, and we're not really seeing any movement in that.
Well, let's take a bit of a closer look at those potential replacements then for Luke Shaw. Nabaid?
Well, I'm going to take you to the big screen. We're looking at some stats, and I think Manchester United are in this situation at the moment where a left-back is absolutely crucial. Because essentially you have Luke Shaw, who plays such a big part in Manchester United's build-up play. And right here we've got Sergio Reguilón, who has been linked his heat map. As you can see, he's a very direct wing-back. He's essentially someone that, under Conte, has certainly played somewhere out here. And that's probably not what Manchester United need. Playing in a back four, you need a left-back who contributes to build-up play, which is Luke Shaw's role. And I don't feel like bringing in Sergio Reguilón gives you that sort of allowance to do that. You then have someone like Marc Cucurella, who, as you'll see on the heat map in a moment, comes inside a little bit more. He's definitely better in possession. He's also someone at Brighton that contributed to their build-up play, and at Chelsea has played as a left-sided centre-back. Now, there were periods where Ten Hag reverted to Shaw as a centre-back and occasionally a left-sided centre-back. But for the most part, what you want from your left-back is something like this, but also have the ability to do that as well. That is what Cucurella can do. And that brings him potentially a little bit closer to maybe what Luke Shaw's heat map looks like. It's very difficult to find a sort of perfect match for Luke Shaw because he's incredibly good in possession here and he's very good in possession here as well. The one standout stat for me was that Reguilón averages 31 passes per 90 in his time at Spurs, whereas both Shaw and Cucurella average 70 plus. Now, as I say, Manchester United want to build up from that left-hand side. That's why Luke Shaw is a massive blow, whereas someone like Reguilón, you bring him in and you have to change your style of play. You no longer have a left-back that wants the ball or wants to play. He essentially wants to bomb on and try and create chances. Now, I'm not saying Ten Hag won't do that, but I feel like if you're looking for a Luke Shaw out-and-out replacement, Cucurella's profile matches a little bit better. Now, I've got two Chelsea fans with me, so I'm going to ask them. Chelsea fans here, is Cucurella one of these players that still has got it in him to come into Manchester United and do the job? And is he just sort of needs a gaffer that can put his arm around him? And is Ten Hag that guy?
It's unfortunate for Cucurella. He's not top of the list in terms of Chelsea fans' favourite players. And it's not been a great season for him. Of course, he was linked with Man City before Chelsea signed him. So Pep Guardiola saw something in him. I think that's probably why Chelsea jumped and paid all that money for him. And it's not been comfortable. At Brighton, you saw him play more in a back three, the left-sided centre-back in the back three. Similar positions to what Levi Colwill played last season. Gave him licence to bomb on. At Chelsea, he's played a lot of times in the back four and it's not suited him. And I remember one game last season, it was West Ham away from home, Mudryk was playing on the left-hand side, and every time Cucurella would get the ball, he wouldn't open up his body and look outside, he'd always turn inside, which suggests a player that's lacking confidence. He's not looking to progress the ball, he's looking to play the safe and easy option. I think maybe if he has a fresh start at a new club, you can see the best in Cucurella, because there's no doubt about it. What we saw at Brighton was a special player who looked like he was on his way to the top, just hasn't worked out for him at Chelsea.
There's already a relationship there as well between Chelsea and Manchester United this summer in terms of doing business. They've shown they will sell, Chelsea will sell or do business with supposed rival clubs.
Yeah, but I think a loan deal, I don't know if that is realistic in terms of, you know, you're strengthening a direct rival or with a loan deal. Obviously, you probably wouldn't be able to play against us. But I think for Cucurella, it is unfortunate, like Kweku said. When Chilwell's fit, he's going to start. So even if, you know, he was at the top of his game, you know, Chilwell's vice captain, he's always going to get those minutes. So he's not really going to get the freedom to almost improve. And I'm not counting him out because of last season, because a lot of Chelsea players didn't really perform to their standard. But I think he definitely needs minutes, whether it's going to be on loan to Manchester United. I don't know. I don't see that happening.
I don't know why you would, if you're Chelsea, United are potentially competing with you for top four, and they are in big trouble. They do not have a left back. You cannot then give them an option, in my opinion. You can't then go, we'll give you a little fix for the time being just because we need to get him off our books. You may just, I know Cucurella isn't at the moment first choice for Chelsea, but you might just be giving United the fix just to get them over the line. And as Kweku said, I actually want to see Ten Hag navigate out of this tactically rather than just go in the market and find a solution.
It's also, it's a numbers game for Chelsea. You've seen that in the window already. Chelsea do not concern themselves about what other teams are doing. It's all about what Chelsea are doing. Hence why they'd sell Kovacic to Man City, who are maybe not direct rival, but we've seen Jorginho and Havertz go to Arsenal. We've seen Mason Mount go to Manchester United. For the Chelsea hierarchy, it doesn't matter where they go. If they need to shift Cucurella's wages, they will do that. And if Manchester United is the destination, then they will do it. And they've shown, in terms of Pochettino at Chelsea, that maybe Ian Matson's ahead of him. Obviously, Ben Chilwell's definitely ahead of him. He's our vice-captain. And so I don't see a future for Cucurella at Chelsea. And if he's just going to sit on the bench for the next 3-4 months until the January transfer window, then I wouldn't be surprised to see Chelsea let him go to Man United.
Important to point out, nothing too concrete on those deals yet, just Manchester United interest exploring loan deals for Cucurella and Sergio Reguilon. Obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on it here on Sky Sports News, keeping you across everything that happens. Still to come on Good Morning Transfers, we ended last week with Jurgen Klopp saying Mo Salah is not for sale. But will it stay that way come Friday? We'll discuss his future and also hear Jamie Carragher's thoughts in a couple of minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Liverpool yet to receive any offers for Mohamed Salah after interest from Saudi Pro League club Al Ittihad emerged last week. Let's hear from Jamie Carragher on what he had to say about the future of Mo Salah.
Yeah, I don't think Mo Salah will go. One, because it's so late in the window. I don't necessarily think Mo Salah would want to go. And what I mean by that is I think Salah will be a little bit like Ronaldo. I can see Mo Salah playing till he's in his late 30s. So I think he might think, you know what, I've got another 3 or 4 years. But he's got 2 years left on his contract. I don't know if he'll stay after that with Liverpool. But I think he'll want to score as many goals as he can, win the biggest honours, break records. And I think there's time for him to go to an MLS, Saudi Arabia, maybe somewhere else in the future in his late 30s, because I think he looks after himself so well. He's such a professional. I think there's still a lot more years in Mo Salah right now. But if you actually think of the model of FSG and the reason why Liverpool have had so much success, when someone made a crazy offer for one of the players, which was Philip Coutinho 5 or 6 years ago, Barcelona paid 130 million. They didn't try and replace Philip Coutinho. They bought Virgil van Dijk and Alisson Becker, and then Liverpool went on to win the lot. So in some ways it is the model of the ownership in terms of you've bought Salah, you've had great years from him, he's over 30 now, and if someone made a ridiculous offer and it was earlier in the window...
What would a ridiculous offer be?
I think it'd have to be over 150 million. I'm not saying he's worth that right now at his age, but I don't think 100 million, you're not replacing Mo Salah for 100 million. If they offered, as I said, a crazy figure, but I think it's so late in the window. If it was earlier, maybe they might think about it because that is the model that they've had in the past, but I don't think Mo Salah's going anywhere.
So that is Jamie Carragher's thoughts. Let's talk live now to John Gibbons from the Anfield Wrap. John, good morning to you. Salah, I mean, he was terrific yesterday. What did you make of the game and the performance?
Yes, Salah played really well and wasn't expecting anything else really, and the performance with 10 men, you know, was fantastic from Liverpool. There was obviously a lot of problems in that first half, but you know, how they played with 10, how they kept in the game. Sometimes a little bit of luck, obviously, but a lot of hard work as well, and got the rewards at the end. It was obviously some celebration when that winner went in, and a brilliant feeling and a great afternoon for the club.
Absolutely. Let's get into the detail then on Mo Salah. Al Ittihad, from what we are hearing, haven't given up on signing Mo Salah. Could you understand why... It's probably a silly question, but can you understand if he wanted to go there?
I think I understand a little bit if there's the temptation for him to move on, because it's not just the money on offer, but I think for him, he maybe feels a little bit aggrieved with a few things that have happened this summer. It's interesting that 6 weeks ago his agent came out and said there's no way he's going, but since then I think he lost out on the captaincy and the vice captaincy, which I think would have been a blow to him. He's obviously then taken off in that first game against Chelsea, and crucially I don't think he's necessarily saw the investment come in the squad that he would have been expecting, and other top players at the club have come out to say they were expecting as well. So I think a few things are combined to make this Saudi offer a little bit more tempting than it was earlier in the summer. But then it's up to the football club and Virgil as the captain and Jürgen as the manager to ensure that the Salah is feeling the love, and he's feeling that the Liverpool is a place that is going to be challenging for trophies this year.
Yeah, and I suppose for Mo Salah as well, being one of the most high-profile Muslim players in the world, that would be a significant reason for him wanting to move there. What about him staying at Liverpool? Do you feel like the club are doing enough in the market to tell Mo Salah that we are here, we're ready, we're good to challenge this year?
I don't think they have yet, and I think there's obviously a few days left, and all Liverpool supporters, and that include Mo Salah in that, because he wants to win as much as anyone, you know, we'll be looking at that and thinking, well, how serious are you really? I think this is a squad to challenge for top 4, but Mo Salah's only got a few years left in his career, although I take Jamie Carragher's point just then that the condition he's in, he might go on for a little bit longer than most players. But the window started really well. They got 2 really good players in, and you could see how good they were at St James's Park yesterday, McAllister and Szoboszlai. But then it just all went a little bit quiet, really, and there was obviously players that they lost out on. They've got Endo in a little bit later, but after a lot of sort of messing about, really. And now it feels like they do need 1 or 2 more. And I don't think it's just Mo Salah. I think it's all the top players at the club will be looking at it and thinking, well, are we challenging this year, or are we trying to get back into the Champions League and hopeful of fourth or fifth if it goes that far. And I think that's what top players are looking at, really. You want to win stuff. Mo's got personal ambitions. He wants to win the Ballon d'Or. Well, you only do that if you're challenging for the big honours, and that's on to the owners to make sure that happens now.
Jamie talks there in the clip we heard from him about him being worth more than £150 million. What happens if Al Ittihad put that on the table and say take it or leave it at this point? Is there a question mark there for Liverpool, or is it simply not enough time left to replace him?
I hope there isn't a question mark, because it's a huge amount of money, but as supporters, you'd rather see the money on the pitch, not in the bank. And I don't think there is time to spend it. I think you're looking around and there's not a lot of wide forwards out there who've got the ability of Mo Salah, and crucially, the football clubs will be willing to sell. And if we're saying we want £150 million for Salah, other football clubs will be ramping their prices up as well, or just saying no, that they're shutting up shop and that they want to be going in. So it's not as easy as saying, oh, let's take a great offer and try and spend the money. We've seen how hard it was for them to sign a defensive midfielder. Trying to find a world-class wide forward with less than a week to go is close to impossible. So I can't see them doing it. You hope they wouldn't do it, and you hope no matter what the offer is, there isn't the temptation, because, as I say, football fans, we want to see the talent on the pitch.
And just finally, John, what would be a good week for Liverpool this week in the transfer market?
I think a good week would be two. I think they are a defender short, and you're seeing a young lad come on the pitch yesterday, and he did really well, but is at the moment, I think he'd be better off sort of going out on loan. You saw Joel Matip starting and did okay, but they're having to take him off because they have to be careful with him. And I think defender-wise, we just are a little bit short at the moment, and I still think we need another midfielder. I think the two that come in early in the window, we can see a good players. Endo, he's had a difficult start so far. He's played a lot with 10 so far, so we'll sort of wait and see on him. But I think they are one short. So I think two would be good. I think if they could just do, if it could only be one and it's a defender, I think that would be okay. But I'd like to see them really go for it. I heard Jamie Carragher say on Sky yesterday, and I agree with him, that there's the opportunity there for Liverpool, not just to get back in the Champions League qualification, but to really challenge this season, and it's on the owners to make that happen now.
John, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
John Gibbons from the Anfield Wrap there. What is a good week? What do you want to see Liverpool do this week in the final few days of this transfer window?
I think I slightly disagree with Jamie, that I think he obviously is desperate for Liverpool to sign players, which is completely natural, but the timing of where we are in the window essentially means it's near on impossible to make sure you can actually sign a player. I think what I would like to see is some intention to sign players. So Chet Doucouré at Crystal Palace, 70 million's been quoted. Liverpool have 70 million. They bidded 115 million for Moses Caicedo, so they've got the money. And Liverpool desperately need another midfielder and a left-sided centre-back. I was looking through a few names, and Pershers at Torino, used to play for Ajax, very good in possession, dominant in the air, good in wide areas. Liverpool need a left-sided centre-back. But the reality of it is, I think I can sit here and scream that Liverpool need to go sign two players. There's a couple of factors here that come into play. Liverpool, one, need to be able to find the players first, and those clubs need to be willing to let go of those players. Are Crystal Palace going to let go of Doucouré for 70 million at this point in the window? I don't know. And so then you're going, well, where else can we find a player? Just some intention at this point would be nice, because you don't want to end this week going, well, we got a couple of players that we wanted, we missed out on a couple, and that's sort of the end of it. And actually, we beat Newcastle, so it's fine.
Are you surprised there wasn't a clearer plan for Liverpool's transfer window? Obviously, you got McAllister and Szoboszlai very early, but then since then, you haven't really seen clear targets that Liverpool have gone for, and we know what happened last season. You know the improvements that Liverpool want to make in their squad. Are you surprised that there's not been certified targets and we're going to go for them and get them?
I'm not surprised. I think they would have had an idea that actually Fabinho was fine, Henderson might have gone, and I think they would have gone Fabinho, McAllister, Szoboszlai were completely fine, and that I would have been fine with. But then obviously the bid comes in for Fabinho, 40 million, which is completely unrejectable. The moment you sell Fabinho, you now have a situation where you go, well, we just sold the player we didn't actually want to sell because the money was you couldn't turn that down, and now we have to find a six, which is probably the hardest position to recruit for one of the bigger sides in the Premier League, and that's the situation we're left in. Because I think McAllister and Szoboszlai, early in the window, those were two brilliant signings and still are. But now those two guys are getting asked to do jobs they don't really want to do because Liverpool sold a player in between. I don't actually blame FSG or Liverpool for selling Fabinho and Henderson, but now they've left themselves pretty much no time to recover. And that's mainly because Caicedo went to Chelsea. So actually Chelsea should get the blame for this.
Yeah, interesting few days ahead for Liverpool, that's for sure. We'll be keeping you right across it all here on Sky Sports News. On the way, we'll assess the window so far and update you on a potential incoming at Tottenham. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. 4 days remain in the window, and Sam is taking a look at the window as a whole for us. Sam.
Yeah, we've seen some massive deals over the summer and in Europe in the Premier League. So let's run through some of the numbers. We're going to start with the biggest spenders. And of course, Chelsea are at the top, spending £379 million. Moises Caicedo was obviously their biggest signing, the British club record. They got Lavia and 11 more signings in after that. Arsenal are second. They got their business done quite early. We'll probably look to get in a few more signings, especially with the injury to Timber as well. Manchester United, we know they're busy to get a few more signings, and Tottenham and City. And then let's go to the lowest spenders. And of course, Luton are at the top, spending just £9.5 million. They have brought in 9 players, but they're probably going to be looking to get in a few more signings. Everton, we know they are keen to get in some players, but they haven't been able to, get the finances for that. Fulham and Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace are all also on that list. And then we'll go who has the most signings, and that is, again, Chelsea. They've made 13 signings. Burnley have been very active, bringing in 12 players. Luton 9, Bournemouth 8, and Sheffield United 8 as well, spending £117 million. And then the fewest signings are Crystal Palace at the top with 2, Fulham 3, Liverpool 3, and Manchester City 3. Crystal Palace will probably be keen to get in a few more signings, but they did very well in keeping Elise, who they'll be hoping to be playing in the next few games. And then my signing of the window so far, I've said it from the start when the deal happened, is James Maddison from Leicester to Tottenham for Tottenham for £14 million. I think it was an incredible signing. I think he started so well for Spurs. He's already got a few assists, he's got a goal as well. And I think just in terms of value of the signing, I think that he's going to be one of the biggest signings this window and probably one of the players of the season.
I think Tottenham will be very happy with that.
Proper word there. Tottenham. I've never say it like that.
I've never heard you say that before.
Trust me.
No, but on the Maddison, the way he plays football, it's like he's the best player or the best kid in the playground. And we live in a world of like inverted fullbacks and asymmetric formations. But if you look at this Spurs team, despite the fact that they are really dynamic under Big Ange, they are pretty conventional as well. They've got wingers who stay out wide but like to cut in, and they allowed James Maddison to be that number 10. You don't see that in football very much these days. So against Bournemouth, he was dropping into areas, dropping deep if he had to. He was making those late runs into the box. That's how he scored this goal. And I think it's a perfect fit. I love the fact that he took the number 10 shirt as well. He's got that mentality. I want to be the best player at this football club. We saw in the first game of the season against Brentford when I think Son went off and Romero also went off. He wore the captain's armband on his debut, which is crazy. And I think he's a perfect fit for the Spurs. Spurs traditionally are a team that have had maverick players. If you think back to Glenn Hoddle, and then you think about more recently Van der Vaart, Gareth Bale, obviously a different type of player, but I think he fits Spurs absolutely perfectly.
Yeah, I think he's just a joy to watch, and I think when you look at obviously losing Harry Kane is so big, and we've said it on this show multiple times that it's going to be difficult to replace him, but signing a creative outlet like James Maddison for the price that they got him without anyone really battling to get him, I think it's probably one of the best deals. Obviously, it's my signing of the summer, but I think it's going to be such a good signing for them when the going gets tough. You're playing those games in the winter. You have a few injuries, and you're relying on that one player to score from nothing or get an assist out of nothing. And I think he's just going to be incredible for them.
Yeah, well, Tottenham might not be done there either. Tottenham, they're in talks with Nottingham Forest over a deal for Brennan Johnson. Brentford, we're told, also very interested in the player, while Chelsea, it seems their interest has cooled a little bit on Brennan Johnson at Nottingham Forest. So would he fit in at Tottenham?
I think he will. I think he'll be a really good signing for Tottenham. I think what he's done for Forest has been incredible. Obviously, he was one of their key players last season, but he's proven from last season that he's a versatile forward. He can play down the middle, he can play out wide, he can play attacking midfield as well. He's actually played, majority of his games last season was playing up top. He scored a few goals as well, and I think when you're looking at the options that Spurs have currently, Richarlison up front, it's not really working out. Maybe it's going to take him a few more games to get up to speed with what Postecoglou wants from him. But I think if they have Johnson coming in to give him some competition, he can also play out wide as well. Both of them can play out wide. So I think it'll be incredible.
This just shows how Richarlison has struggled a little bit this season. 6th for shots, chances created 7th, 12th touches. This is his Tottenham rankings for this season and has been dispossessed the most times as well. It's clear that things haven't started very well for him.
I think also for Spurs, combinations is very important. For a while, I think Spurs have just constantly bought players that don't fit the system. So now you've got Maddison and potentially Brennan Johnson. Where Brennan Johnson and Richarlison are quite different is Brennan Johnson's a very good runner in behind, and Maddison loved that combination with Jamie Vardy. And he's also someone that, as Kwaku just said there, plays as a traditional 10. He wants to play the ball in behind the last man. And I also think with Richarlison, my only worry is he costs 60 million. So you can't just decide he's not a good footballer anymore. I just think you've got to find the right system for him. But Brennan Johnson will also be useful because despite Kulusevski's early months at Spurs, he has now struggled a little bit. So he's an option off the right-hand side.
Do you think he's feeling the pressure a little bit, though? Because Harry Kane leaving, like we said, it's a big deal, and now everyone knows he's the
Let me tell you, there's no more pressure than Brazil number 9.
That
he's
is
used
true.
to that. I'm confident that Richarlison will be a strong player for Tottenham.
That's a good point as well, because Spurs, I know everyone's really excited about their first 3 games this season. They have looked good, but ultimately I think they're going to be competing in around 5th, 6th, maybe even 7th this season. Who are they to turn down or say no to Brazil's number 9, who leads the line for Brazil very, very well? And rather than maybe go and find the player that you think can do the job, I think you can hold firm with Richarlison until the end of the season, see how he does, and the next summer go in when the striker market's a bit more fruitful and go and get that striker that might suit the system a little bit more.
I think for what you just said there, with him being Brazil's number 9, I actually think he loves the pressure. Now, whenever he played as a lone striker at Everton when Dominic Calvert-Lewin wasn't fit, he'd love being the guy. I think at Spurs at the moment, they're sort of like, because of the pressure on him, it's like the reverse, where people have almost gone like, he's Richarlison, he's not very good. I think he actually likes the feeling of like, top player, carriers on your back, you're the guy. Happened at Everton, happens at Brazil. Some of the things he tried during the World Cup, I mean, the overhead kick is outrageous. At Spurs, he almost like doesn't even go into the box. So this might be one of those where it takes a little bit of time and Brennan Johnson can come and supplement that, and then they pile on the pressure and maybe he does well.
So what we do know over the next few days is that Spurs absolutely would like to sign an attacker between now and the deadline, but they also want to reduce their squad as well. They're looking at moving several players on this coming week. And if those players do leave Tottenham, it could see a new centre-back and potentially a new central midfielder arrive as well. Davinson Sanchez is one who is of interest to Nottingham Forest, but they also have other targets. So that's what's going on at Tottenham. They're looking at outgoings, but they really want to sign an attacker over the next few days. Romelu Lukaku could be leaving Chelsea as well before the deadline. The latest on his future is coming next. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Join the conversation with hashtag Transfer Talk. We are streaming right now on Sky Sports Premier League for you. Let's get to Romelu Lukaku now, whose future could be resolved this week, finally, as Chelsea look to offload him. Roma want to sign the striker on a loan deal and are currently working out the financial details of that. Sky in Italy are reporting no agreement has yet been reached on a loan fee or whether Chelsea will be able to cover a portion of Lukaku's wage. Will Chelsea be doing everything they can over the next 4 and a bit days to get this done, to get him out the club?
Yeah, I think so. I think they've been trying to do all they can to get him out of the squad. He hasn't been training with the first team squad. He's been training at Cobham and been involved in that sense. But I think from when he said that his heart is at Inter Milan and then that move broke down and then the Juve move broke down, it's like what move suits him the best. And it's been unfortunate because obviously when he first signed, we spoke about it so many times, when he first signed, we expected him to be that signing that took Chelsea to that next level, and it just never really worked out to that point. And I think now where it's so clear that both parties don't want to be working with each other, it's almost given the teams that are linked with him the upper hand, where they can say, you know what, you're going to have to cut your wages if you want to come to the club. You're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that. And I guess if he does have a good spell under his former manager, Jose Mourinho at Roma, could be something great for him. It's going to be interesting to see him in Italy for another club and see the reaction that he gets in and around there. But yeah, they definitely are going to want to get it done sooner rather than later.
He's still got another 3 years, I think, on his Chelsea contract as well. I mean, how important is his next move for his career in Europe?
It's the most important. Well, every next move is the most important move. He needs to make sure this is the right one. He needs an arm around him, really. This is a manager that he's very familiar with. Worked with him at Chelsea, worked with him at Manchester United. And Jose Mourinho, I think he can create that us against them mentality, which he's really good at. Lukaku, if you ask him, he feels like the most hated right now from both Inter fans and Juve fans and Chelsea fans. He feels like nobody loves him. But Jose is great at making players that feel like that channel it onto the pitch and score goals. And I feel like Roma would suit him down to the T. They're doing good things as well, Roma. They're bringing in some exciting players. And Jose Mourinho is one of the greatest managers of all time. I think Lukaku with Roma and Jose Mourinho is a great combination. But this move is imperative for his career because there's no way back at Chelsea. Like you say, training the Cobham, but training away from the first team. When Pochettino's asked about him, he's very non-committal, but we know what that really means. And so securing this deal at this point in his career is imperative for Lukaku.
I also think for Lukaku, he's one of these players that I feel like when the pressure's on, he actually does get going. So when he went to Inter, he had a lot of pressure because he went back and said that was after he said he loved Chelsea. When he went to Chelsea, the whole narrative and story was there at Chelsea. Whenever Lukaku's in a typically tough situation, he tends to ride it out quite well. I'm just excited for his first interview at Roma because I do wonder what he's going to say.
He shouldn't say much.
Yeah.
He should just genuinely, because I think a lot of the trouble that he's got in terms of the media is just saying too much. And obviously he's a player that likes to express himself, and I'm not the type of guy to say you shouldn't express yourself, but in certain situations like that where it's caused you to have a few situations with clubs, fans, just let your football do the talking. And people will say again, okay, you are back in that conversation for one of the best strikers in the world, because he was in that conversation. He put himself there. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
It's difficult with strikers though, because it's so tangible, the results of your good play. You have to score goals.
Yeah.
And so I think for Lukaku, when he stops scoring goals and maybe his build-up play or his touch is not as great or aesthetically pleasing as other players, he finds it difficult to kind of get going again. So it's important that he does hit the ground running and scores goals for Roma, which I think he'll do. He's proven he can score goals in Serie A. He was incredible at Inter Milan. Let's not forget that Chelsea bought him for £97.5 million for a reason. We were so excited that everything looked like it was geared towards Chelsea and Lukaku having this symbiotic relationship, which hopefully would have resulted in winning the Premier League. It didn't happen, but I think at Roma he can rebuild himself.
Well, from what we understand anyway, Romelu Lukaku wants to move to Roma. Expect things to probably accelerate this week. You would have to get a move on to get him through the door at this point. He's been away in Brussels over the weekend, so you would expect things to start moving on that one very, very soon. Following Balogun, looks set to be named as a Monaco player as well soon. He's had a medical over the weekend, ahead of a deal worth around £38 million. He'll sign a 5-year deal. Will he go on to be a success at Monaco?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a quality player. I really like Balogun. I think he's one of those players that I'm surprised that there's not more Premier League clubs that are in need for a striker to just take the punt and say, you know what, we're going to pay what Arsenal are asking for. Also with him, he might be favouring a move back to a league where he has guaranteed goals, 21 league goals last season. And I think he needs that next move to be the main man, not on loan, but you're going to be there. They're looking to get Champions League football again, almost a little bit of a rebuild at Monaco. So if he's going to be the head of that, I think it's a great move for him, and it might be a move that Arsenal regret in the future, especially at the price, because like we said, strikers are so hard to find in this window, and they could have got a lot more for him, and I'm surprised that they didn't push for that.
I think Arsenal sort of snookered themselves a little bit. They gave Eddie Nketiah a new deal, they signed Gabriel Jesus, and then you'd have Florian Balogun just sort of hanging around. He's been unlucky because he got injured at exactly the point where Arsenal could have bought him in. I wonder what would have happened if he came in for these first 2 or 3 games, scored a couple of goals, then you maybe don't look to sell him, but having 3 strikers on the books that all want to play week in, week out is very, very difficult. And Eddie Nketiah just got a brand new big deal. So
and he's playing really well as well.
Yeah, and he's playing really well, yeah. So
if you look at Balogun as well, he's looking at Monaco as a move, and Monaco are more than willing to, if a player performs well, they'll sell them on eventually. And I think he sees himself playing at the highest level. Not saying that Monaco can't achieve that. They did, in 2017, when they had that incredible lineup with Mbappe in it as well. But I think he's probably looking at moving on in a couple of years and going to a top club in Europe.
Just quickly then, just 20 seconds, do you think Arsenal regret selling him?
I don't know the full terms of the details. Full terms of the deal. I'd imagine they should have a buyback in there somewhere, but it doesn't feel like Arsenal will regret it, because I feel like they've done business so well and they want to get players out, bring new ones in.
OK, thank you very much for the moment. We are back a little bit later. Good Morning Transfers returns at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Do join us for that. Transfer Talk is here later time, 1 p.m. today. European football expert Kevin Hatchard is in the studio. And the Transfer Show returns at 5 and 7 tonight. The Football Show is next. Sue Smith, Stephen Warnock are here, plus Ref Watch. You don't want to miss that with Dermot. He'll give us the verdict on that Virgil red card.